It's actually hard to see Tom. There you go. It's a little hard to see him in the dark. A man was walking along a Southern California beach, and he was in deep in prayer. And all of a sudden he said, Lord, grant me one wish. And the Lord says, well, you're trying to be good, and so what's your wish? And the man said, build me a bridge to Hawaii so I can drive over anytime I want to go. And the Lord said to him, your request is very materialistic. Think of the enormous challenge of that bridge, the supports required to meet the bottom of the ocean, the concrete and steel. I can do it easy enough, but it's hard for me to justify your worldly desires. Why don't you take a little more time and think of another wish? Well, the man walked along and prayed a little. And finally he said, Lord, I wish I could understand women. I want to know how they feel inside, what they're thinking when they give me the silent treatment, why they cry, what they mean when they say nothing, and how can I make a woman truly happy? Well, the Lord paused a moment or two, and then he said, you want 2 lanes or 4 lanes on that bridge? We're going to talk about love today, but not that kind of love, not romantic love. We're going to talk about the highest kind of love. It's called agape love in the Bible. Because we've just finished a series that talks about the 5 healthy qualities of a healthy church. Worship, that's a real celebration. Fellowship, that's more than food, that is coming together as members of the body of Christ. And we talked about discipleship. It's a fancy word, but it means getting better every week, learning a little bit more, developing your spiritual habits. We talked about service. Because after you've been in church a little while, you need to be sharing what you've got with others. And then we finally, last Sunday, talked about outreach. Now here's what I want to say today in the final message. They don't fit together real well. In fact, there's a special kind of glue that holds it all together. And that is this agape love we're going to talk about today. These are the words of Jesus. A new command I give you, love one another. As I've loved you, you must love one another. By this all men will know that you're my disciples, if you love one another. It's an incredible statement, and we can't even begin to talk about it because we have some problems about love. We beat it to death, number one. We say, I love my wife, I love my children. I love pickled pig's feet. I love pizza, I love America, I love apple pie, I love rock and roll. And in the process of loving everything around us, we have weakened the word an awful lot. The second problem, most of us have gotten our idea from some movie. Some couple on the movie taught us what it means to love. Or we picked it up out of the music of our generation, like Tina Turner. What's love got to do with it? In the old 60s, what is it? If you can't be with the one you love, love the one you're with. And we picked all this up from the music. And then there's another problem. A lot of people think love is a feeling, an emotion. It's a knot right about here. A quiver in my liver, as they say. An ocean of emotion. And real love causes emotions, but agape love is not based on emotion. And it's agape love that's the glue that holds all these other principles together. You take love away, and all five of those healthy church things, they just fall apart. Another problem is a lot of people think love is uncontrollable. I love it to come to me and say, I feel giddy. My head is spinning. I'm weak in the knees. And I'm thinking, honey, you got food poisoning. and then they say people in love do the craziest things. Like that's a good thing. And people say, I fell in love. It reminds me of walking down a street, falling into a huge pothole. You know. And by the way, you watch that language, because if you fell into love, it just happened, you can fall out of love just that fast. So what is this agape love? The Greeks have 5 words for love. It's the highest, most important expression. Basically, it means doing the very best for the other person. Now, I want you to, before we even start, I want you to see number 1, that love's a choice. He says, over all these virtues, put on love, which binds them all together in perfect unity. It's a command, put on love. It's a choice. I'm going to put it on, or I'm not going to put it on. Now, if it was a feeling, if love was uncontrollable, then God couldn't command me to do anything. But He does command me to put on love, and love is an action. Dear children, let us not love with words or tongue, but with actions and in truth. Love is all about how I act towards another person. Now, that's easy enough to define, but what does that mean really? And we are incredibly fortunate because we have an entire chapter in your Bibles, 1 Corinthians chapter 13, that talks about love. They were probably, this chapter verses were probably used in your own wedding. A lot of people call this the Bible's love song. But I want to give you the background very briefly. It was coming to the Corinthian church. They were a really immature bunch of believers. They were not healthy in any way, shape, or form. They were fighting. They were bickering. There was division within the church. They doubted Paul, and Paul's the guy who started the church. They felt superior to all the other people, all these different groups. They, unfortunately, were also into prostitution. They were into idolatry. And some of them were getting literally drunk during the communion service. They were still, some of them, going up to a pagan temple and engaging in some sexual activity from their old pagan background. Some of the people in the church were having affairs, apparently. And some of the people in the church had picked up the idea that to be a Christian, you had to be 100% celibate. They were selfish. They were immature. They were incredibly ignorant about what the Bible teaches. I love teaching a class on Corinthians. I've never done it here, but I love it because it makes me feel so good to realize that I'm not so messed up as these people were. These people are so messed up, so unhealthy, that Paul has to define love to them. Now, a little bit of trivia theology here. Chapter 13 is a little bit different in the Greek. There's a possibility it's not even Paul's. He might have picked one of the hymns that they were singing in church. It may be poetry from somewhere else that Paul had picked up. It may be poetry that Paul himself did write for another occasion. But this Bible love song will let you know what agape love is, and you have to practice that for all these other 5 things we've talked about to work together. This song, this poem, however, has 3 verses. And that's the plan today. Just look at all the verses. Here's verse number 1. Love's essential. If I speak in tongues of men and angels, but have not love, I'm only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mystery and all knowledge, and if I have a faith that can move mountains but not love, I am nothing. Zero. Zip. If I give all I possess to the poor and surrender my bodies to the flames, but have not love, I gain nothing. Love's essential. You got to have it. Paul says you might be a fancy talker. You might be very eloquent. You could even speak in several different languages. But if there's not love behind those words, you're only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. Noise. And I've seen a lot of people, and frankly, I've seen a lot of churches. They talk a lot about love, but when you really see through them, it's just noise. Paul says you might be pretty smart. Maybe you boast about how smart you are or how spiritual you are. You might even have the biblical gift of prophecy. And you really know all this knowledge. And your faith might be so strong it can literally move mountains. But if you don't have love behind it, you're nothing. Zero. I've seen people like that. All they want to do is just brag about how spiritual they are and how much they know. They brag about their power and ability. But spend a little time with them. You discover it's all about them. It's not about love. Paul says you might be willing to give everything you have away and even suffer death because you're a believer. But even here, without love, you've accomplished nothing. Love is the minimum. Love is the foundational, basic meaning of being a Christian. And if you don't have love, you're just going through the motions of everything else we've been talking about for the 5 weeks. You're going through the motions of being a believer unless it's based on love. Because love, number 1, is essential. You can't do it without it. Now, number 2, second verse. Love is ethical. Some of you ask, well, what's ethics? Short, ethics is your rule of conduct. Ethics are the rules that you live by every day in your dealings with the rest of the world. And Paul lays out some ethics of agape love. Love is patient, kind, does not envy, it does not boast, it's not proud, it's not rude, it's not self-seeking, it's not easily angered, it keeps no records of wrongs, doesn't delight in evil but rejoices with the truth, always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Wow, that's a lot. Patient. Patience simply means I have to make allowances for other people whose faith and shortcomings are, not like mine. I have to be the one to take the time to wait because they're not quite there. They're not quite ready to change. And you wonder, how in the world do I find strength to wait for other people? Because I remember how much God waits for me. I mean, look at us. We all make the same stupid mistakes over and over again. And God's still there forgiving and forgiving and forgiving. And if the God of the universe can take time to wait for us to get it together, then the agape kind of love will take time to wait for the people around us to get it together. Love is kind. You say, well, what's kindness? Kindness is simply to care for the needs of other people. Kindness is the willingness to meet the needs of other people. Wouldn't really be such a bad thing if I didn't have to give up so much of my own time to do this. But we're seeing more about what agape love is. You see, I've noticed we all struggle in being kind to each other. Sometimes we like to shoot the little barbs and cheap shots. I saw a card the other day. If I had an ice cream cone, I'd give you half. If I had 6 candles, you'd get 3 candies. If I had 2 apples, 1 would be yours. If I win the lottery, I'll send you a postcard from Tahiti. It kind of describes our basic attitude. And to be kind to the other person means I'm going to have to be compassionate and forgiving. That falls in with that patience thing. The only reason I can have a relationship with God is because He's willing to forgive me. And the only reason I will ever have a relationship with other people is to learn to forgive them as well. Well, how about this? Love does not envy, does not boast, is not proud. All 3 of those things have to do with a word called insecurity. I envy what you have because I'm insecure with what I have. I boast because I'm insecure about my own life. I'm proud because deep inside, I don't feel proud. I feel worthless. You have to have security in any relationship that involves love. You take any relationship and answer with this insecurity that this verse is talking about, and it becomes unhealthy. In your marriage, nothing will kill that relationship faster than the addition of some insecurity, some lack of trust, hiding something from one another, making demands. Do this and I'll love you. Some of you today need to say, no matter what happens, I love you and we are in this together forever. Because in the church, the same thing happens. And God says, no matter what happens, I will keep loving you. And church people need to learn that no matter what happens, we will keep loving one another. As part of that patience and as part of that kindness thing. The next part, and we're still on the second verse about ethics. A series says love's not rude, it's not self-seeking, it's not easily angered, it keeps no record of wrongs. They're describing people. They're describing relationships. You probably even had this kind of relationship with somebody. You see, some people don't care about other people. Rudeness is just the way they deal with other people because they don't care. And some people don't care because it's all about them, not anybody else. That's why they're self-seeking. Oh, and by the way, you might fit in for a while as long as you're helpful and valuable. But these kind of people will, once you've outlived your usefulness, they'll spit you right out of their lives. And then some people just don't like people. And they're angry all the time. And the problem is always with the rest of the world, not them. And then there's those people, bless their hearts, they found their way into the church an awful lot. They love to keep a record of what you do wrong. They just love to recount your mistakes year after year. All of those things, they're the same thing. Somebody else thinks they're more important than you. And that's dangerous, and that's not agape love. The whole concept of romantic love can get kind of goofed up if you don't keep this out of there too. Because if love in your home means you got to do something for me, you got to bring me flowers, you got to get me candy, you got to be physically attractive, I need your complete attention. You know, that's not agape love even. That's not even good romantic love. And unfortunately, it comes into the church. What's the church going to do for me? What's the church doing for me? Rather than how can I serve others, as Christ said to do. Well, love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with truth, because some people just love negative stuff. They love to hear the dirt, and they take pleasure in hearing the latest bad thing that you've done. And Paul says, no, look, real love looks for the best, looks for the truth. It always protects, it always trusts, it always happens, hopes, perseveres. By the way, there's a principle in here that's just now hitting the psychology books in the past generation or two. It's very simple how you act your way into a new feeling. You do not sit around until you feel like doing something and then do it. You act first, even when you don't feel like it, and sooner or later the feelings will catch up. By the way, that's why you show love when you don't really feel like showing love. That's why God commands it, because it is possible to love and not wanting to love. Love is a conscious choice to do the best for the other person. Sometimes that means I got to wait for them and be patient. Sometimes it means I've got to be kind and forgiving. Sometimes it means that in a world of insecurity, I need to be there for them. And my love won't depend on their level of maturity. Sometimes I'm going to have to protect them and trust them and hope for the very best. But eventually, love is a choice. And I can make it or I can reject it, but love is ethical. Third verse. Beginning to wonder if Jesus isn't coming back. Love is eternal. Love never fails. But where there are prophecies, they will cease. Where there are tongues, they will be stilled. Where there is knowledge, it will pass away. For we know in part and we prophesy in part, but when perfection comes, the imperfect disappears. When I was a child, I talked like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. When I became a man, I put my childish ways behind me. Now we see but a poor reflection in the mirror. Then we shall see face to face. Now I know in part, then I shall know fully, even as I am fully known. And now these three remains, faith, hope, and love, but the greatest of these is love. There are some credible theology in there that will take us another hour and a half to talk about. But I just want you to see the basic beginning. Love's eternal. There will come a time when we don't need prophecies anymore. We won't need prophetic ministries traveling around the country or the TVs. We won't need tongues. We won't need supernatural gifts. There'll be no more searching after knowledge. There'll be no more church services. There will be no more communion services. There will be no more preaching. And there'll be no more offerings. But what will be left is called love, agape love. Paul says when he was a child, he thought like a child, but when he grew up, he started acting like a man. Now, you'd have to read the whole book of Corinthians to understand what he's saying there, but he's slapping them in the face. Because they are bragging chapter after chapter how mature they are because they're doing these things like getting drunk at communion. And Paul's simply saying, grow up. Grow up, people. Learn what love really is, what it's supposed to be, and start doing it, and then you'll be mature. Now, a little bit of actual history. There was a Roman emperor named Julian the Apostate. Because Julian did not like Christianity, he tried as hard as he could to go back to the ancient Roman gods, Zeus and all those, Venus. But as he looked around his country, he still was honest enough to say something. He wrote it down. We have it. You can go read it. This is kind of a paraphrase, okay? But basically what he has written to his people was, Why don't we see that it's the Christians who show benevolence to strangers? Why don't we see that it's the Christians who take care of other people's graves? It's the Christians who live holy lives. No Jew ever has to beg. Christians not only support their own poor, they even support the poor of our people, he says. And people, our people, he says, meaning the apostate. He says, our people see that it's the Christians doing this and not our people doing it. And then he says, somehow we've got to teach our people, meaning the Romans who were not Christians, we've got to teach them how to love, and we have to teach them how to serve. Wow. That could be true of any part of America. What's that old song say? They'll know we're Christians by our love. Well, a church is going to rise or fall on its love, because you can have all the money, you can have all the programs, but if you don't have that basic love, you're just not going to go anywhere or do anything. Well, so we know what's important here. I'm going to ask you to stand as we share a final song with you today.